Call to order the Finance Committee meeting for June 6, 2022. I'd like to ask Mr. John to say the blessing for us.
Please rise. Father and Son, Holy Spirit, amen. Heavenly Father, we ask your blessings on each of the committee members here tonight so that we can make the best decisions for the citizens of Ascension Parish. Bless us and guide us in all our actions, and may your Holy Spirit be with us at all times, for we place our lives in your hands, always and forever, in the name of your Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, roll call. We have Councilman Melanson, Councilman Lambert, Councilman Orgeron, and Councilman Robert absent. And Councilwoman Casso. Thank you. Chair's addition. I think we have one. Joey, do you want to step up and tell us about the item?
We have one change order I want to add to the agenda. It has to do with the Manchac Acres Bridge crossing. The information in the change order that has to do with the delays in contract time due to there was several factors, the delays in the box culverts being manufactured and brought to the project, delays in manufacturing the boxes themselves, and the contract time in the change order amounts to 63 contract days, and the reason why I had to get it put on tonight's agenda is that if we don't have the contract time added, I will not be able to pay the contractor this time period, so for this month. So and
move we add it to the agenda.
Okay. Okay. Is it only time, or is it also additional funds?
It's got additional funding also. It all had to do with the amount of rain that we had.
Okay.
The equipment that he had to have on standby, and extra pumping and all that. So it has money, but it also has contract time.
Okay. And you have someone here to
Yes.
to detail it. Okay. Any objections?
I think we have to take a roll call vote.
Do we? Okay. Well, we were talking about that earlier. Okay. And this would be item 5L if it passes. Vote up. All right, it's unanimous, so that'll be added as item 5L.
Thank you.
All right. All right. If anybody would wish to speak on any item on the agenda, please fill out a green or red card and turn it in to Miss Ashley, and we'll make sure to cover those. We'll move into general business. 5A, approval of an ordinance to declare certain assets as surplus items. And this is you have a list of this. So I talked to Ms. Timmons before the meeting. So I think this is, if you review the list, you agree with moving it forward. We would actually have an item written, an ordinance written by Sanimal, and we would introduce that at the next council meeting.
Motion to approve. Second.
Motion and a second. Any objections? Hearing none, that moves to the council for full approval. All right, item 5B. Approval and enter into a time and materials task order driven contract with the only responsive RFP submitted by Delcon LLC to support the parish with plumbing maintenance and repairs to parish buildings and facilities with a budget of $150,000. Mr. Dean?
Yeah, basically, we put this contract out to help support our maintenance group. We put it out twice. with a mandatory and only had one responsive bidder. So after 2 tries, we asked to move forward with the one that we got.
And Delcon is the same company that does the maintenance on
That's correct.
the Marvin Bro, right?
Yes,
So we have a good track record with them.
that's correct.
Okay.
Second.
Motion by Councilman Thomas, second by Councilman Turner. Any objections? Any questions? Hearing none, that moves to the full council for approval. Item 5C, approval to enter into a contract with the lowest responsive quote submitted by Delcon LLC in the amount of $60,925 for renovation of the existing administration office area with the addition of 5 storefront walls, adding 3 new office areas. Yeah, what,
Second, I have a question.
I have a question.
okay, I have Aaron in the queue, even though, well, go ahead, John.
Well, John can go.
Yeah, go
No,
ahead, Cal.
I didn't push my button. You go first.
Oh, okay. What is this and where are we doing it?
It's right there between when you first go into the parish president's office, going back toward John's office, where those cubicles and stuff are. It's actually putting in some glass storefront to give some isolated office space for additional office space.
I mean, is this necessary?
I mean, I was asked to put it up by administration, so.
I mean, the reason I'm asking is I know we just talked about a lot of our code enforcement. We're gonna need to hire more people there. I wanna make sure when we get to doing that, we're not like, hey, I mean, this could be one and a half code enforcement people here. So I just wanna make
Well,
sure that we're
I
not gonna have
believe that
problems.
space is in a different part of the building.
I'm talking about employees to actually do code enforcement.
Yeah,
And what budget does this come out of?
General administration's budget.
That's all I have.
No question? Okay. And entertain a motion.
Motion.
I object, I just don't know it's necessary.
Okay. Well, I don't have a second, so right now,
I made the motion, John made the second, then you went into
oh,
questions.
before the questions, thank you. I have an objection. So, I guess we'll do roll call vote. Five yeas, 1 nay. That item passes to the full council for approval. Item 5D, approval of the amendment number 3 to master contract with Meyer Engineers Limited for Dutchtown Library Splashpad to extend contract term through July 3rd, 2023. This amendment is for extension of term and does not affect the contract price.
Motion.
And a motion by Councilman Turner, second by Councilman Cagnolati. Any objections?
Just a question.
Question.
Yeah, where do we stand, I guess, on this and the next one, the Sanimal splash pads?
on the Dutchtown splash pad, we are in talks with administration right now on how to move forward. The bids came back over budget, so we're trying to figure out. The main problem is getting the materials. That's the biggest issue we're having. So we're trying to work with finance and administration to try to work out a alternative method to see if maybe we can get the materials ourselves. That way the contractor's not responsible.
Is that the problem with the bidding, is that they're having
Yes.
to raise it up because they
Yeah,
can't get-
because the manufacturers won't guarantee prices. So, they'll give them a 7-day guarantee. Well, by the time we go through this, it's a month down the road. So they can't put in a price and then it goes up 20%, so a lot of them just don't want to touch it.
Nope, sounds good.
All right. Any objections? Hearing none. That motion passes to the full council for approval. Item 5E, approval of an amendment number 3 to master contract with Meyer Engineering Limited for Sanimal Park Splashpad to extend contract term through July 3rd, 2023.
Can I interject? Actually, I'd asked that this be taken off the agenda. We don't want to extend this contract. Administration decided to put this contract out, and whenever we get time to do it, we'll do it. But at this point in time, the Sanimal splash pad, we're not going to move forward.
Well, I don't have a second, so it dies if nobody seconds it, so that takes care of it. So that motion dies with, for lack of a second, so. Item 5F, approval of amendment number 4 to retainer contract for professional services with Meyer Engineers Limited for the Lamar Dixon Expo Center gym expansion to extend contract term.
Second.
Motion by Councilman Turner, second by Councilman Thomas. Any questions? Any objections? Hearing none, that item moves to the full council for approval.
Thank y'all.
Thank you, Dean.
Good job, Dean.
5G, approval of entity/state agreement between DOTD and Ascension Parish government for the LA 42 Roundabout at Joseph Area Road, project number H010795 to convert existing intersection to a roundabout at LA 42 and Joseph Area Road, Prairieville, and resolution authorizing Parish President Clint Quintmall to execute this document on behalf of the Ascension Parish.
Motion to approve.
Motion by Councilman Lawler, second by Councilman Cagnolati. Any questions? Any objections? Hearing none, that motion moves to the full council for approval. Item 5H, approval of change order number 1, R.J. Daigle and Sons Contractors, Inc., for the Move Ascension Project, US 61 and Germany Road intersection improvements, MA-18-05, to add 60 days for the procurement of precast drainage structures and to provide for assembly period and for the increased time to procure electrical equipment.
Motion. Second.
Motion by Councilman Mason, second by Councilman Cagnolati. Any questions? Any objections? Hearing none, that item moves to the full council for approval. Item 5I, approval of cooperative endeavor agreement by and between Ascension Parish government and Sheriff Bobby Weber, whereby Sheriff Weber will take over the administration of the day-to-day maintenance, expense, and upkeep of the Ascension Parish Jail with each party's responsibility outlined in the CEA attached. John Diaz.
Yeah, so this is pretty much sums it up, Dell, what you said. This is just tasked the Sheriff's Department with operations and maintenance of our parish prison. Once again, it shrinks our footprint. It's something we worked with Bobby. Not only does it just transfer exactly what we would have paid, each year and what we budgeted to them, it also transfers the capital improvement budget of $1.7 million. The beauty in it is we think that Bobby can get a lot of economy of scale just from the simple fact that he has some of the most talented employees and inmates. And if you ever get a chance to go look at what he did when he remodeled the old courthouse, it's beautiful. It looks like he paid somebody a large sum of money to do it. So, and real quick, just the last thing is, so to incentivize Bobby and the Sheriff's Department to make sure that we kind of keep up with the jail, any surplus funds gets transferred back to the capital asset bill, so he's encouraged or he's incentivized to save money so that we can, do a lot more capital projects in the jail. So,
All right, I got a motion by Councilman Thomas, a second by Councilman Lawler. Sheriff, would you like to say a few words?
Mr. Chairman, committee members, thank you. This is new territory for us. Just to remind you that a large portion of that jail was built in 1975. A second portion of that jail was built in 1988. The third unit, as you know, some of you may have been involved in, was built in 2009. That's perfectly fine, but we have a jail that's approaching some parts of it 50 years old. And traditionally, we have relied on parish government to do maintenance at the jail, and it's done a great job, but there's more and more challenges there, especially with electrical and plumbing and those issues. And the people that's on the grounds there every day that have their eyes on it is somebody I'd like to introduce to you tonight. That's my new warden at the jail, Major Tony Nethkin. And the person that I would commit to the maintenance of the jail would be Lieutenant Adam Brasso, and so who has experience. And you're right, John, that we got our eyes on the ground every day, and we think that the preventive maintenance and future maintenance of that jail, we frankly just think we can do it more efficiently, and are willing to do that. And we're not asking for more, but we hopefully we can have some cost savings and do a more effective job, and also work on some capital outlay projects that's laid out in the CEA. So I want y'all to give it at least consideration. Whatever decision y'all make, fine. But we think we could. I think this will be a win-win for parish government and also for the sheriff's office and for the offenders there at the jail.
Okay, thank you. Councilman Cagliano?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. No, I read through the agreement. It's well-written, and I like the part that John talked about with, at the end of the year, if there's excess funds, it goes into the budget for capital improvements. It comes back to the parish to spend for the jail. So, well-written document. I support it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Councilman Lawler?
Yeah, I just want to tell the sheriff and John, there's great working together, great ideas here, something really is going to help us a lot. But I have to disagree, Sheriff. I don't think that anything that came into the world in 1975 is getting old by any means. I'm just saying. It's a great year. It's a vintage year, in my opinion.
All right. Seeing no questions, any objections? Hearing none, that motion passes to the full council for approval. Thank you, Sheriff. Item 5J, does anyone have any questions about the contract report for the month of May 2022? Which is provided beforehand, so. All right, well, we'll move on to item 5K. And that is discussion of the lighting district tax. Mr. Diaz.
Yeah, so Chairman, members of the council, this is just a discussion item to kind of start talking, about what we do in the future with these light districts. So as it stands right now, there's 7 lighting districts, and if you combine the fund balance of all 7, you're looking at about $5 to $6 million. Something tells me the taxpayers didn't pass these millages for us to accrue interest in an account. When you look at some of these districts, particularly the 5 on the West Bank, they're saturated with lights. There's literally very few places where you can add additional lights, and I'm not saying there's not any places at all, but when you look at the fund balance, and I'll be honest with you, I think if you take all 6 or all 7 districts, if you didn't renew this tax, all of these lighting districts could last for another 10 years. And so what we're asking is us to spend the next month or 2 months with the council members and the sheriff as well to see how can we repurpose these lighting districts, add more utility to them. In my mind, the whole concept of a lighting district is to make our streets safer and our community safer. So maybe that includes the ability to spend this on license plate cameras in and out of the cities, particularly on the West Bank, where, instead of waiting 10 days to have a suspect, you can have a suspect in about 2 hours to 2 to 10 hours. There's a lot of technology. We visited the East Baton Rouge Sheriff's Department. This called this shot spotter technology that we ought to look at, and if you ask Bobby, the sheriff, he'll tell you one of the biggest problems he has on the West Bank from a safety standpoint is reporting crimes. A lot of people just don't want to report crimes in certain communities. This whole shot spotter, within seconds, a gun goes off, it sends to the 911 center the latitude and longitude of exactly where that shot was fired. And so it allows us to, and once again, I'm not saying that these are the 2 or 3 things. I just want to start that process. How do we utilize some of these? And here's the other thing. You look at one of the lighting districts on the East Bank, it has a total of $3.6 million in funds. All right, so if you're looking at that area, what makes our streets safer? Some people can argue safety widening, and maybe we buy utility right-of-ways to put more lights up. I just don't think we should put this on the agenda until we've had a discussion, or put this on the ballot until we've had a discussion on how we repurpose it and add more utility and more function. And I know Aaron had some ideas as well, but this is just a discussion item. I'd like to hear what other people have in mind as well.
Okay. Councilman Lawler?
Yeah, I talked to John very briefly about this. We texted on it, but I think it's a fabulous idea because we do have a couple districts which is a lot of money sitting in them, but we also have other districts where, maybe we can repurpose some of this money to make our community safer. Lighting goes a long way, even upgrade some of our lighting in some of these areas. I think it's a fantastic idea to start this discussion. One of the things I mentioned to John is, and I know I've talked to Michael about it, Councilman Mason about it, is trying to get a lighting district again for Highway 42. There's been a lot of support for that lately. And this is something that maybe if we can tell the voters in that area, in that district, that it's not just going to be lighting, but it's going to lead to more safety changes, it could really benefit everybody in this parish. So John, I applaud you for coming up with another idea. I fully support this, and I'll make the motion that we bring this back to the agenda at least in 2 months from now to give us time to speak about it. But hopefully we can bring it back as an actionable item.
So real quick, Aaron, so the plan here is to put them on the agenda for the next finance meeting. They have to go on the ballot in November, but all we want to do is extend them for 2 years until we can change the legislation that allows us to broaden the scope and purpose. And so that gives us up until the next session to draft legislation and discuss what we want for each district. And so, you know, I don't necessarily think we need one legislation for all of them. It could be different. So that's the plan now. It's just to renew it for 2 years, so it's a renewal until we have a chance to change the state legislation.
Okay, I just don't want us to forget about this.
No.
I know you won't let it go away.
Yeah.
You want to go first? Okay. Councilman Thomas has a question. And
In mentioning it, it's ironic that this came up. I talked with John, I think last week, and out of the 7 districts, 5 of them in my district. So it's a great idea in terms of us putting the necessary things that you're talking about doing due to the situation that we have on the West Bank with the shootings, so to speak. I think this is an excellent idea in putting some of this money that's just sitting, putting it to work so that we could assist the sheriff in doing what needs to be done. So I'm all for it, and it's a great idea, and let's look forward to getting it done as quick as possible. Thank you.
Councilman Turner.
Now, as far as I know we have the individual lighting districts, but I'm going to assume the funds in each district will stay for utilization in those districts.
Exactly.
Okay. And I do like the idea of what's the one that registers the gunshots? What is it called? Shots fired. I'm fine with that. Now, the license plate reader, I'm not too big on that one, but the shots fired, I think would be something good. Good addition.
And I just had one question. Could we have a list of the lighting districts
Yeah.
and just the funds when they're coming up for renewal prior to the next meeting?
Yeah, we'll send
I
that.
think that'd be helpful,
Yep.
just to understand.
And I'll send a map as well.
Okay. Any more? Oh, Sheriff, you said you wanted to say a few words.
Mr. Chairman, thank you again. I just want to commend this council and this administration for being such forward-thinking group to work these things out. I didn't realize you had 7 districts, and it is funded. I will tell you that everything now in law enforcement is kind of changing to technology. Technology is playing such a big role, and video technology is playing a huge role. Everybody's trying to develop command centers. We have made a tremendous amount of investment with Motorola to be able to do that ourselves. Cameras are not cheap anymore, but they're not as expensive as they once was. And I always considered our lighting districts a part of public safety. If you don't have to go back very far, maybe Gustav and maybe Ida, to see when those lights or electricity's out in Donaldsonville or anywhere in the parish, how dark it gets in your community. So the lights are tremendous. I agree with the idea of maybe upgrading some of the lights, and some could be better. But if we can incorporate, and Mr. Turner, I disagree, license plate readers have solved more crimes for us in the last 2 years than almost anything else. So license plate readers are very important for us. It's not, maybe you have some privacy issues with that, but these cameras are not the ones that's taking pictures of people inside cars. It's just getting us a description of a car and a license plate. So we've solved more crime by doing that. A shot spotter Those are less reliable probably than LPRs, but they do work. The shot spotters have to try to triangulate where a shot occurred. We seeing the uptick in Donaldsonville recently, and that's still a small community with the lighting district. If we can use shot spotters and also the LPR system. If not the LPR system, other types of crime cameras would be very beneficial. So thank you for at least thinking about that and incorporating that into some forward planning that you may do and keeping the sheriff's office informed of that. We have the technology in our next generation 911 center to handle the command central and to handle the video feed. So we'd love to go in partnership with you guys and the lighting district to see if we can better provide public service in our community.
Okay. Councilman Thomas.
Just to collaborate on what the sheriff just said, I would hope that we're talking about it today, not sort of kick the can down the road a little bit. Let's get on it immediately, because again, it's not just in Donaldsonville, it's all over the world. So pretty much we see the gun violence, the shooting and stuff that's taking place. And with the idea that you talked about, Sheriff, shot fired, that would give you a relief and getting whoever it is that's doing it, get them in hand quickly. So that pays out pretty good. So allow ourselves, John, whatever the administration got to do, pending getting this going as quick as possible. We need to get on it and get it done. Because again, out of the 7, 5 of them is in my district.
Well, the other one's going to be in your new districts.
Well, it is. So, thank you and I appreciate it.
All right.
Thank you, Chairman.
Who made the first motion? Remind me. Was it you? Did you?
I don't think it's necessary for a motion. I withdraw the motion.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Just want to make sure we don't forget about it.
So we'll have
So
this on the next.
it'll be on the agenda, the actual, to push the ordinances
And we'll
forward.
have some list and
Yep.
some more details on the next one.
Yep.
Okay. That concludes our discussion on item 5K. Now we have item 5L. And Ashley, I guess we need some details so we can, or are we going to just get details? If it moves forward, we would push it to the full council, right? Okay. Good evening.
Want me to explain it?
Yeah, I think a little explanation would be good.
Okay, so this item is for a change order for the Manchac Acres at Muddy Creek Bridge Replacement Project. The change order is change order number 3 for an additional contract time of 63 calendar days and an increase to the construction amount, the contract amount by $34,075.75. So the main reason for this change order is because the owner supplied box culverts were delayed due to the steel supply. Capital Concrete pushed them back, and they kept getting pushed back about 2 or 3 weeks at a time. So the contract time, that 63 days, is partially because those box culvert being delayed, we needed to extend the contract time. They're originally supposed to be delivered towards the beginning of March. They didn't get delivered towards the end of April. And then also weather days, because of that box culvert delay, it pushed the project into the wetter months that the contractor wasn't originally anticipating. So whenever we have a bad rain event, there's high water in that channel. So not only is it for the rain day, but it's also for the high water days and the rework that they have to do following a rain event. So that's the contract time. The contract amount is, because of the box culvert delay, the contractor had to spend money for equipment rentals. He's billing for a month of equipment rentals, but really the boxes were delayed a little bit more than that. And then he's also billing for the labor during that time. So yeah, that's,
Okay.
y'all have any questions?
Did you say 63 days?
63 days,
Okay, I
yeah.
just wanted to make sure. What would that put the date until? What would
That-
be the final date?
That puts substantial completion July 15th.
Okay.
And I do want to add the boxes are set in there, so this is the last of it for the box culvert.
I was kind of asking the last question for the benefit of the public. I know people are asking.
Yeah,
So-
I understand that.
Okay, I entertain a motion.
to approve, please.
Motion by Councilman Lawler, second by Councilman Cagnolati. Any objections? Hearing none, that will be moved to the full council for approval. Thank you. Item 6A, budget presentation for the Transportation Department. Mr. Goldsmith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This presentation has been a long time in the making. Administration has been asking us to try to do something like this, to start going through the different departments. I know you've asked us to do this as well. And so I'm glad we finally put a deadline, and Councilman Lawler said, well, look, let's start with transportation. And that's actually a good thing because this has a lot of moving parts. So this is a great one to start with to kind of set up a format, because what we want to do here is go over the department, but also kind of give you a consistent format, because I have a feeling this will not be the last presentation we do.
We hope not.
And so we want to get that started. Now, before I do start, I did want to let y'all know that we got some news recently, and it kind of ties in with the budget. We got the Distinguished Budgeting Presentation Award, again from GFOA, for the 10th straight year, so we just got the news on that. What's significant about that is they've upped the criteria and made it a little tougher. So we had to step up a little bit. We did the 5-year capital budget. We did the strategic planning so that we could ensure we continue to get the budgeting award, because I didn't think it would be good in my first year to not get the budget award. That probably wouldn't be a good thing. But anyway, so back to the presentation. There's a few goals that I want to try to lay out as we start this. One is just to describe what is included in transportation, because we use that word very broadly, but there's a lot of pieces to that inside the actual budget. Want to talk about where transportation gets its funding from, where the money is spent, and then give kind of a historical view on the expenditures and revenue. Now, this is going to be more of the 30,000 foot. I could have given y'all the 20 pages of big old letter size paper that had all the detail, but I thought we'd start off with this high level, and we can always get into the detail. And if anybody wants more detail, you know, you can always give me a call, and we can walk through anything with y'all. So just starting off, the department organization, this is really more of the administrative part of it, where the staffing is composed. And I talked to Joey a while back about this. And so these are the pieces and parts that make up transportation. You've got bridges, you've got capital improvement, you've got lighting districts, you've got signs, pavement programs. There's a lot of different parts that make up the actual department and the staffing. And I thought it was also important to talk about the Transportation Committee. We've got Councilmember Aaron Lawler, who's the chair. We've got Dempsey Lambert, who's the vice chair. And going through the committee responsibilities, the committee jurisdiction, I thought was good, because this actually is a good set of jurisdictions for a committee, because it talks about almost the planning life cycle. You know, we always talk about the life cycle of plan, implement, monitor, measure, and then adjust, and this contemplates a lot of that. So it's got, you know, recommend survey and engineering needs, it's got priority lists, recommendation for capital outlay, which is definitely important, review cost-sharing program, review engineering status reports. There's a lot of monitoring that's involved in here, and it also has that master plan thought to it. So I just wanted to show this, that it's a good committee jurisdiction that really can help, because the budget and the finance supports this. And the finance is what supports where this type of jurisdiction takes the program. Now, what makes up transportation? This is one of the first key slides I want to talk about, because there's 3 different funds when you look in the budget, and we have fund accounting. And so when we talk about transportation, the first thing is the Road and Bridge Fund, and that's really the operating side. That's where our staff are. And that's the only fund that we have staff in. So you've got the typical personnel expenses, you've got the typical operating expenses, and you've got some capital, but that is things like equipment. It's not the capital projects that you're used to hearing. Outside of Road and Bridge, we have 2 capital funds. So this is where the big projects are done. So the first is Road Construction Fund, and that includes the pavement preservation, road reconstruction, traffic engineering, geotechnical, and survey. And In 2017, this changed because everything used to be in here, and then 2017, we started Move Ascension. And so when Move Ascension came along, that's where they started a list of projects that we wanted to try to do into the future. And with this last budget, we expanded that out to 2026. So that is the capital fund used for various transportation projects, specific projects. So you can see the dollar amounts there, and you can see they kind of taper off. And we're going to talk about that in a little bit because funding source is a key subject that we want to hit on that I know we've even talked about in this committee before with the transportation funding. And just to give you an idea of what Move Ascension looks like through 2026, it's a lot of projects. And so again, that's going to be important when we talk about where is the funding going to come from for these. And we do have Jeff Burst here. We've got Joey here, and obviously they'll be able to answer any questions at the end. But we've talked a lot about future funding, and we'll kind of get into that at the end. All right, so where does the 2022 funding come from? For Road and Bridge Fund, the operating side, you've got the sales tax district number 1, and that's about $8.2 million that comes in from there. Sales tax district number 1 is the unincorporated area in the parish. You also get some state funds from the State Parish Transportation Fund. If you look in House Bill 1, the legislative session, I guess it's over by now. It ended today. They signed, he died. House Bill 1, Schedule 2903 is that Parish Transportation Fund, and you can see how much they allocate to the entire state. And then there's a few miscellaneous funds. For road construction, and that's the first piece of the capital side, sales tax district number 2 is a half cent for road maintenance, construction, and fire protection. 2/3 of that half cent goes towards road maintenance and construction, and 1/3 goes to fire protection. So there is a dedicated source for that fund. We also have impact fees and interest. And then when you move on to Move Ascension, this is where a lot of the questions come up because there is no dedicated source for Move Ascension. Obviously, we try to get grants. There's some federal funds that are in the works, $30-some-odd million that we're working towards. But mainly it's from when we sold the bonds in 2017, and you'll see that on a graph in a little bit, and then transferred from the road construction fund. And you'll get to see those when we talk about the history. And there's a little bit of interest earnings. So obviously this is a big discussion, is where in the future do we want the transportation funds to come from, and how many of these projects can we actually do with the funding that we have available over the next 5 years. All right, so just to give you an example of the historical spending from the different funds, and you notice we've been talking about 3 funds and now we've got four lines. That's because in 2018, we were asked to split out the transportation department from road and bridge. Really all that is the administrative piece. So you'll see it's about $500,000, and it's because it's just those administrative personnel and those administrative funds. So you'll see that everything is fairly consistent except for in 2017, it looks like road construction funds spent a lot of money. A lot of that was a $13 million transfer to Move Ascension when Move Ascension started. And you'll see that when we show you the fund history, that's where they got a lot of their startup money between that and the bonds. Also, just something to point out, and this kind of comes from my legislative days, you'll notice that at the end of these charts, you'll have dotted lines. Those are the budgeted or the existing budget that we have. Because the budgets are usually a little bit higher, because you typically don't spend everything you budget. So just wanted to make sure there was a distinction between the budget and the actual. So actual, for example, in Move Ascension in 2021 was $8.2 million, and you see we've budgeted $27.6. Now, it would be great if we could spend all that, but probably more than likely with all the challenges that transportation faces between right-of-way acquisitions, utility issues, now we've got supply chain issues. We're probably not going to spend the whole 27.6. Now just kind of diving into the different funds, when you look at the Road and Bridge Fund, and this is the historical spending for our operating side, you can see how the personnel has kind of peaked and then it started to go down on that blue line. And then you notice it's dropped dramatically from 21 to 22. And that's because we focused really heavily this last year on trying to separate out the drainage staff, from the transportation staff. They used to be allocated 50-50, 90-10, and so when we really took a look at it, there were a lot of staff the transportation budget was paying for that were really East Ascension drainage. So the budget went down dramatically. I think it was $2.5 million is how much I think we reduced the salaries from the road and bridge when we did that separation. So it was pretty significant. So again, this is just historical spending for those items. This just kind of gives you another view of it when you're comparing the last couple years, and you can see that change in personnel. So the blue all the way to the left is the 2020 actual expenditures. The green, the first green, is in the 2021 actual expenditures. Then you get to the budget. So you can kind of see how things have changed over the last 3 years. You can see the personnel has dropped, and again, that's because we did that switch. Operating is up a little bit, but again, we would have to see, are we really going to spend all of that? It's about a $1.9 million increase in operating, you can see on that bottom piece, and that's because we increased asphalt filler, gravel, sand, dirt, and fees for recording and engineers. So again, we'll see at the end of the year if we actually are able to spend all of those items. Then capital increased. We put in some money for vehicle acquisitions, equipment acquisitions, and from some contract payments. 2020 was a tough year when you realized we were in COVID and there wasn't a lot of things going on, and since then it's been hard to get vehicles and equipment, and so now we're kind of playing catch up with trying to buy things. So hopefully we'll be able to get equipment, hopefully we'll be able to get vehicles. It sounds like maybe things are loosening up a little bit, but we'll just have to see. So now when you move on to the next fund, the first capital fund, the chart looks a little bit different because we wanted to tell a little bit different of a story. The story here is related to the fund balance. What money's coming in, what money are we spending, and what is left over? And so the road construction fund gets in more money than it spends. So what that means is the fund balance is constantly increasing. You'll notice that in 2017, we talked about, we transferred that $13 million over to Move Ascension. So the fund balance dropped pretty dramatically. But since then, we've been spending about $4 million a year and having $3 to $4 to $5 million in excess. So the blue bar is what we've spent, and the green bar is what we have in excess. Just to give you an idea, we also transferred I think it was $4.5 million in 2020. So there's from the road construction fund over to Move Ascension. So even when we moved money in 2020, we still had a surplus left over and still increased the fund balance. Now you're going to see a very different story when we talk about the Move Ascension, since it does not have that designated fund. It got that big influx in 2017 when we started, $26 million in the bond proceeds, and then $13 million from that transfer from the road construction. And since then, it's been slowly whittling down. Even getting some infusions from the road construction, it's still going down. So I think that's the big discussion. You see how the blue is what we've spent, the green is what's left over, and most times that's a negative. And that's why the fund balance is going down. And of course, if we spend everything we had budgeted for 2022, the fund would be down. It shows $5 million, but really most of that is obligated, and we've had that talk with Jeff. We're really at zero in all effect with Move Ascension. I guess the only bright spot, going back real quick to road construction, remember it's that half-penny sales tax. The sales tax has been increasing, which is good. Last year it was 20% over the prior year. This year we're running about 14% ahead. We do like to budget conservatively, so sometimes that does create a fund balance. But again, that kind of is what plays into the master plan. When you have a master plan of where we're going, which projects, then we kind of have an idea of where that surplus will go. So having a surplus and a bigger surplus than we anticipate is not a bad thing, but it's key to having that master plan moving forward of where it's going. And so one thing we've talked with Jeff about is trying to enhance our capital 5-year plan this year. Last year, we just had expenditures. Well, this year, let's try to put revenues as best we can, because we know there's some fund balance, we know there's some federal dollars, but how far do those get us? How many years does that get us before that fund balance is depleted, before there's no more federal money, there's no more grants? So I think this year it'll be a clearer picture. But I think, and I know they've had lots of conversations, and I know Councilman Aaron Lawler, the chairman of transportation, has talked about this before, is where do we go? And I think once we have that, you'll get a real clear picture of, when the well runs dry and how many of those projects can we get.
I have a quick question.
Sure.
And maybe, can you go back 2 slides?
Sure.
One forward. Okay, so when you show from 2021 actual to 2022 budget, again, that would be assuming we spend the 27 million, correct? Okay, I
Correct.
just wanted to make sure and make that point.
And I think it's important, it's budgeted, we may not spend it, but I think in the sense we use the term obligated, I think Jeff would say that money is spoken for. We've got it attached to projects. They might not be able to get to them, but if it's not spent this year, hopefully it'll be spent next year or soon thereafter.
Okay. Councilman Cagnolati.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Patrick, just one quick question on the Road and Bridge Fund, Move Ascension Fund, and what's the third one? Road Construction Fund. Are those taking into consideration the outside contracts that we have?
Yes.
On the expenditure side, that's everything, because I
these
know
are
we
all
do have
the-
some overlay contracts and some other third party.
Yes, these are all the contracts, and in fact, it even takes into consideration the debt payments for Move Ascension. That money actually comes off the top first. You won't see it in these funds because it's in our debt fund, but that 2/3 that we get from the half-cent sales tax District Number 2, the first 1.8 goes to pay that debt service. So this is everything. Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Councilman Lawler.
First of all, great presentation. So glad y'all did this. I want to say a couple things to make sure the public understands some things. We talked about not being able to get to some projects. It's not, and anybody correct me if I'm wrong, all the people here, but it's not because we're not trying to get to them. It's not because we don't want to do the construction. There are things that have to be done before you can do a project, whether it be utility relocation, clearing and grubbing. All of that takes time. And I just want the public to know that, because when we hear, oh, we just can't get to projects, it's not that we don't want to get to them. There are steps that have to be taken. You can't just go build a road without having all the right-of-way, et cetera, et cetera. A couple things. I know the focus of this wasn't just on, hey, let's go find every little piece of waste in government. That's not going to be any of these. But in looking at this, we hear the public all the time saying, well, they're just not doing anything. They're just wasting money. They've got money sitting around that's not going to use. Is that indicative of what was found in here, that we just have money that we're either wasting or we're just sitting on for the fun of it?
We didn't find anything, or at least looking through this, I didn't see anything jumping out to me that screams that we're wasting money. I think what to me this says is we have a lot of projects, we have a lot of priorities, and we have limited funding. And I know we've talked with Jeff and Joey about do we maybe focus on fewer projects and get those done? Because like you said, right-of-way acquisitions and those type of things can take a long time. And so a lot of times you don't see progress. So I think even the administration has been trying to fix on what can we get done, what's ready. You hate to use the term shovel-ready, but what is closer to shovel-ready than not, so that we can move on those to show some progress. Instead of us saying that we've been working on something for 3 years because we couldn't get the right-of-way, we couldn't get the utilities moved. So I think, to me, that's more of the story, is the focus on the priorities. Where can you have more successes? What's long-term, what's short-term, and what's the best combination moving forward?
And I have a couple other questions, and some of them may be for Jeff and Joey, because I really, this was very good and educational, and I want the public to understand a lot of this also. This money seems like a tremendous amount of money. When you're talking millions of dollars, people think that. But the cost to overlay a mile, does anybody just have an average cost of what it costs just if we had to go out and overlay a neighborhood's mile. Can anybody here just give us a random, not a random number, but just an estimate of what that would normally cost? Joey, or it doesn't have to be an exact number, you're not being held to it, but just give the public an idea that this isn't a, we're not talking about throwing $50,000 on a road here.
Good evening, committee members. To answer your question, Councilman Lawler, typically we use for an overlay program similar to what DOTD does. And if you're just looking at, and every project's different, of course,
Yeah.
but if you're just looking at a parametric type cost estimate for a traditional mill full depth patch and overlay, it's approximately about $300,000 a mile for a 2-lane
Yeah.
roadway.
That's, you know, what I'm getting at here is it's not cheap.
And no, it's not, and that's construction dollars.
Exactly.
Right.
Okay, that's all I was asking on that portion of it. You know, we talked about a plan. Years ago, we have a plan. We have a $1.2 billion master plan over 30 years. When we did that, the plan was, hey, let's look forward and see what we can do. That equates to $40 million a year. And I think we've seen on here, and we don't even come close to that. I mean, Patrick's looking like, yeah, we're not even close. That's what we need, not to, you know, fix every single road, but we develop a plan that would really move traffic throughout the parish and make it safer. And we're running at a huge deficit. We're not even close to getting that, even with federal funds and everything we have going on. And I think what we've seen here tonight is that we are moving toward a point where Move Ascension is not going to have the funds it needs. And then the next question is, what do we do about that? If we believe our roads are important and moving traffic and making our roads safer, then what are we going to do to keep this project moving forward? Because it's the only project we've got that's really focusing on major fixes for our roads. And it's not a necessarily a philosophical question. I mean, we're going to have to answer that. Do we want to keep Move Ascension moving forward? Do we want to keep fixing our roads and doing these projects? And now, granted, the public doesn't always see every single one. We've had some delays with utilities and things like that. But if we don't really look at that hard and make a decision of if we want to do this, we're going to stop being able to do major road work. And we're going to go back to where we were before of just doing a couple overlays here, something there, and waiting for federal dollars and every 4 or 5 years doing a project. And that concerns me because the ultimate goal was that we look at that master plan and really try and get it done. Because it's not unrealistic to think that we could get to the point where we are spending $40 million a year when you combine a funding source, but that $40 million goes to state funds coming in and federal funds coming in. It's also something that literally could be done, but we have to decide if we want to do it. And that's a little bit of a rant there, but Move Ascension has been working fantastically. We've actually got a lot of projects that I think we're pretty close to resolution on our utilities issue, which is going to allow multiple roundabouts, 930, Henry Road, all to start getting done. In fact, we're doing clearing and grubbing on Henry right now. Or is it 930? It's Henry, that's right. Henry, about to do the clearing and grubbing. We've already done it on 930. 930 is ready to roll. We just need to move those utilities. But so this is an excellent presentation. I hope the public sees that money is not being wasted. Neither this council nor this administration is sitting on money, not using it. Another thing to remember when we talk about having money in these funds is, I know we learned this years ago, John, we always have to have money sitting in a fund in the case of an emergency. If a bridge goes out, you have to have money to spend. If a hurricane comes and destroys some roads that we have to fix. So it's good to have money in these accounts, not just spend it to zero every single year. That's how we get ourselves into trouble and have to borrow money. It costs us more in the long run. So great job, Patrick. Great job, the whole team of finance. Mediocre job, Dell. You did a good job on this.
And just to add, I'm glad you made the point about kind of where this could go, because there's about $38 million of secured federal funds, and like you said, those are going to have requirements for match. And if we get bigger pieces from either the state or from the feds, that's just more match. We've got some rescue dollars that we're going to be talking with y'all about soon that we think can maybe help with some of the projects. You can transfer more from the road construction fund. You can maybe bond out some, just talking options, or, there's always the T word, the tax option. So there's a few options but I think those are going to have to be discussed. I just wanted to walk through those. And I do want to say again that I know the administration is really committed to trying to make sure that we maximize these funds. I know the parish president, John Diaz, have been talking a lot with Jeff about how do we maximize this moving forward. I know the council is very interested in this. So I'm glad this one was first because it's timely, it's complicated. There's a lot of moving parts and, looking at the master plan and trying to get the biggest bang from the buck moving forward, I think is very timely, and we may have some opportunities to do some of those short-term goals.
Councilman Kangalani.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Patrick, just a couple of items. Number one, you talked about the rescue plan money. That's been, I guess, sitting there since May of last year, and we had to justify and meet the criteria for spending it correctly, otherwise they'd take it back. And so I think we're due if we haven't already gotten the second half of it.
Yes, sir. We've applied for the second half, so that should be coming, so we should have the entire 24 soon.
Okay. With that in mind, but you had mentioned using it for, I don't think you can use that for match, can you?
You can't use it for match, and in fact, road construction was really not one of the items, but we have 10 million of revenue replacement that we're allowed to have, and that can be used for any government purpose, any normal government purpose. So there's about 10 million that's available from rescue that could be used on the roads. So we kind of got lucky with that because originally, and like you said, the rules kept changing and everybody was looking at each other because nobody wanted to be the first one out the gate and then have it's wrong and you have to pay it back.
Right.
So luckily, waiting long enough, that $10 million came across and they said you can use it for anything. So it allowed us to be able to plan a little bit better.
Good. And the second point I wanted to make is that, it happened here tonight. It seems to be a recurring happening that not just in the engineering side, but when we start a project and we get construction on, there are delays. COVID has caused cost, materials increases, time delays. And is there any way between not just transportation, but all departments can take a look at maybe anticipating, I know it's hard to pinpoint that, but it's a cost. I mean, right now we saw a project that increased tonight $60,000 and in the 63 days, I think, something like that. And I don't see that changing. I don't know about you, but I just don't see it. It's a trend and I don't see it turning around and going the other way anytime soon. I'll just ask the administration to look at that and see, is there any way we can, get a handle on it?
And that's another timely point because we are dealing with that daily with these issues. And with our new contract process that we're working through, we've got, Randy's trying to get ahead of the game to look at these things. We're also trying to look at different things, and we've been talking with our council a lot of, if we bid out the materials and the service and they can't provide the materials, we're kind of stuck. But if we bid out the service and not the materials, then we can move forward. So we're kind of learning as we go how to split some of these things out because, like with the thing Dean was talking about, he's stuck. They can't get the equipment. Yeah. And so we're trying to do the best we can. When we have opportunities for cooperative purchasing, Michael King's been working a lot on different areas, working with us. We're doing the best we can to try to identify, because you're right, it is causing a lot of delays, and we'll continue to look at that and continue to update y'all as we make progress.
Other than that, excellent report. Very, very well done. Thank you.
And I do have to compliment Dawn too. She gave all the data that's behind this, and she couldn't be here. She's out this week, but obviously she is a wealth of information when it comes to the budget side. So this couldn't have been done without her.
Okay. Got a question from Councilman Thomas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've got three questions. One is the roads. We talk about the roads. We talk about all of Ascension, right?
Absolutely.
Is there a breakdown on the roads on West Ascension that we do, particularly on the West Ascension that we normally spend? Is there a price tag on the money we spend on the West Bank for roads?
I don't have the breakdown with me, but I can definitely get that for you. We'll make sure we get that to you so we can see the breakdown.
All right. My other question is, what do you do with the money that's budget that's left over?
So if it's for the road construction fund or for Move Ascension, it stays in the fund. So that's good. It doesn't get repurposed into anything else. Road and Bridge has a very minimal fund balance. It's not much, but I guess the short answer is the money will stay in the funds.
To go back to my first question, I don't have many roads on the West Bank, parish roads particularly.
Right.
And I would think, I mean, I know, in talking to Mr. Lawler, I mean, we pretty much tight on funds for his transportation and roads and stuff. But I don't have many on the west side, so I just feel as though I could, compared to the roads that's being done on the east bank of the river, I should be able to get at least a few roads done on the west bank, in the parish in itself. I'm not talking about city limits, I'm talking about parish-wide, that I should be able to, to get, I talked to Joey, I talked to Joey already, already talked to Joey, but there are some roads that I need done, particularly. I mean, most of the roads have been done, but I have a few roads that I need done, particularly. And I would like to see that we get that transportation chairman, Mr. Lawler. And I'll be talking to Joey. I've been talking to Joey since 2020. So we'll see if we can get some of that done. And my last question I have is the state roads. How much of a problem it is getting state roads done? We have a few roads on West Ascension that we need some attention on with the state particularly. And I know it's a slow process, but some of these roads that I'm talking about, I'm not sure how long they've been on the book, we hadn't got it done yet. So, and I'm talking about inner city and on 943, that's in Bruley McCall. That's one of the roads, state road that we have, that we need to pay some attention to, that I want to get done. So with that in sight, I'm hoping I can get some attention on some of the state roads in the parish on West Ascension that we can get done. I know on the East Bank, we got a lot of stuff, state roads that we do get to. So just shine a little light on me a little bit. Allow me to see where I'm going. So thank you all, and thank you, Chairman.
Okay. Councilman Lawler.
Yes, Coach, first of all, just shoot me an email of some roads, but I can tell you, Donaldsonville, as far as parish roads, a lot of those roads are really done, have already been done. So y'all are in good shape, most of them.
Well, I said that.
Yeah.
I
So
said
y'all
that,
are
but I
really,
still
yeah.
have some.
No, I
I
know.
still have some that I need done.
Well, believe me, I think you can look at everybody on this council. We got a lot of roads that have to get done, and that goes back to the point of that 40 billion was for that I talked about per year was for just doing major projects. I don't know what, and there was a number a while back, Joe, you may remember, but we talked about what it would cost to actually properly maintain parish roads throughout the parish on an annual basis, and we're not even close to that. I mean, the funding isn't even close to where we are to be able to just bring all of our roads up to standard. So it's a hard process. Now, I know that the state is working on surveying roads through one system. I've been talking to John Diaz through us looking at hiring another company to help us survey our roads, give a list of which ones are in which condition, looking at the amount of traffic on them, location of schools, safety issues, all that, so we can put together another roads priority list, which we're still working on that. And, we're going to do that on both sides of the river. There's no doubt about that. But that's something that we have to do. Part of what we didn't want to do is double up on what the state is already doing. So if we can combine those efforts so we don't have to pay twice as much, it is going to allow us to come up with a priority road list. We had one years ago. A lot of that changed after 2016, in part because when the water sat on a lot of these roads, it changed their condition for the or in a short period of time, made them much worse than what they would have been. So we're having to redo a lot of that. But that's going to help guide us. We don't just pick roads willy-nilly. We really do prioritize them as far as, what condition they're in and the different costs. So, we talked about overlay for $300,000. Part of what we try and do also, and this may benefit some on the West Bank, is try and identify roads that don't cost as much to fix, because there are different levels of repair on them that are much less expensive, but that can extend that life much longer. Because what we've had the problem in the past is we allow roads to get in such a bad condition, all of a sudden, we can't afford to get them fixed, and they just sit there and get in worse and worse condition. So if we can do the early, and we saw the maintenance budget in here, if we can do road maintenance early on, that's going to allow our roads to last a lot longer and to allow our dollars to go a lot further. And then we can start saving up money and doing some of the roads that really have been neglected. 930 is a great example. It was neglected by the state for years.
Right.
And that's, we finally have the money to do it, and we're going to be able to do that. So you're not forgotten on the west side, but we'll talk about that later on and see what we can do to help.
All right. LA1 from McCall Sugar House, from McCall Sugar House to Walmart, coming through that stretch is very difficult. The roads are very it's not as driving pleasant as it should be, and that's state highway. So, and we have patch job after patch job coming through there, and that's been for years. So, I would hope we can get some attention on getting that done, and that's through the city. The state road I'm talking about is not Parish Road, but it's coming through the city limits. From LA1 McCall, from Parish, gets to the city limits of Smoke Bin all the way to Walmart. They just finished doing from Walmart to the bridge. They did a good job with that. The state highway did a real good job in finishing that, the side roads, the road and everything. It looks pretty good, and they did a super job. State did.
Okay. All right, I just have one comment, and we have talked about it, Mr. Goldsmith. Can we put this somewhere with open finance, somewhere maybe on the new app? To me, this is a good tool to let just a normal person kind of see where all the money's coming from. So with all the work you and Dawn have done and your whole department, I think it'd be really worthwhile to have the public to be able to access a PDF of this to look at it. I think it's a real good learning tool.
Sure, we can absolutely do that, and I think this fits in perfectly with the administration's attempt to be more transparent. We've got the open finance, we've got this. Hopefully with our new ClearGov budget software, there'll be even more information drilling down further, so we will find a place to put it and work on it, trying to make it prominent so people can see it.
Okay, thank you. And recreation's next month, right?
That's the rumor.
Okay. All right. I think that's all we have on 6A, so we'll wrap it up with 6B on open finance.
The information's still out there, and I think one question I had gotten when we were putting together the budget presentation is, well, where can I see the year-to-date? And open finance would be the perfect answer. So at any point in time, you can look at the year-to-date information on there. Right. So these presentations will go hand in hand with open finance. So as always, if you have any questions when you're perusing it, just let us know, and we'll answer any questions.
And we still don't have expenditures, right? Is that going to be with the new software?
Well, we don't have the vendor detail.
Okay.
We had it pretty much the way we wanted it. Mr. Brian Martinez had set it up, and then Munis did an update, and everything changed. So Brian is now reprogramming to get all that information. When you get it perfect and then it changes, it's not very fun. So yeah. We're working to get it back where it needs to be. We were so close.
And I think that's key. I think that's what people really want to see. They want to see where we're spending the money, where the checks get written.
Yes, because it'll allow you to look and drill down to individual vendors. So if you want to see who our healthcare provider is and how much they get each month from the parish, you'll be able to see that. You'll be able to see all the various engineers we talk about with these different change orders. You can see which projects and how much, and down to individual invoices, how much they've gotten paid for.
Okay. Any questions? All right. Motion by Councilman Cagnolati. Second by Councilman Lawler. Meeting adjourned. Thank you, Pat.